All right, so we're officially live. I'm excited to chat with you, man. Jack Langworthy, CEO of NINAYO, but also working on a new project, one of the most entrepreneurial people I know, and also a resident of Tanzania, which is very unique. What else do you want to add to that bio? What else is new and interesting? Blue
Well,
belt jiu-jitsu?
I would rank it like this: blue belt in jiu-jitsu, also husband and father, but those are big as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike, it's so good to see you again. You know, I get a lot of guys coming to me out here in Tanzania, sort of asking me to like mentor them and advise them. And I think you were one of my first advisors and mentors back in LA in like 2016. And I hold you in high regard in that respect. You've been helpful to me for years now. Not like we chat every day, but every time we tuck back into a conversation, it's beneficial to me. It's applicable. And so I hope that this conversation can like have that impact on other fellas and ladies who are entrepreneurial as well, and especially in emerging markets. So
Totally. Yeah. And I find your story so inspiring because it's so off the traditional beaten path. It's not like, oh,
yeah,
it's, coding in Silicon Valley, and I had this idea for a SaaS product and I raised money from this VC investor and now we were Series C. It's like you were in Africa. Were you in the Peace Corps?
I did the Peace Corps in 2009. It totally fucked up my whole life. I'm still here now.
And you never you go back and
Yeah.
forth in Africa, but what was it? Did you see a certain problem or meet people that you just were emotionally connected with and decided this is the biggest problem you could work on?
I actually like that you included the emotional connection. I that is a big part of why you decide to like spend your time on anything and or move to a country. You feel a pull there emotionally. But I think I was 24 when I moved out here, and at that age, it was an economic crisis. It was '08 or something, and I really just wanted to make a contribution. You don't come to Tanzania and do the Peace Corps uh, because you're wanting something handed to you, I guess. You're trying to build something. And I wanted to understand what is poverty and what are the drivers there. And I lived in a village where I was a math teacher, but like every kid in my school, their parents grew maize for a living. They were smallholder farmers. An acre or two is what sent their kids to school. And I've spent the last sort of 10 or 12 years trying to figure out how to make that acre more financially beneficial to the farmer, right?
Yeah.
That's been sort of my mission since then. And it's insanely inefficient, the economy of Tanzanian agriculture and most of African. I can speak sort of generically. But we have this nascent telecom industry that's come up and provided like magic where you can message and get information and organize and all this stuff. So we've been trying to use that lever to develop this industry, and we've had successes and failures along the way, but it's still so high potential.
Yeah. And how do you rank Tanzania and maybe in particular, with the major city,
Got
Dan, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Go
What is
on, no, go on. I always enjoy this stuff.
Dampasar? Dampasar? How do you say it?
Dar es Salaam.
Dar es Salaam. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does Dar es Salaam stack in terms of other countries? Maybe, some that come to mind would be just South Africa, Nigeria is certainly a big one.
Yeah.
Other countries that are seeming to have a higher growth rate, probably measured in terms of average GDP. Is there something that these cities or countries are doing that seems to be working better, or maybe politically or just culturally or access to technology, or is it just too vague to even parse out?
That's a great question. And I like the opportunity to sort of highlight Dar. It's the third fastest growing city in the whole world, right? Like, and it's been this way for years. And ahead of it, I think is Kinshasa, maybe Brazzaville or Lagos, but these Lagos. All right, I am like a Tanzania boy. I'm not an Africa, the continent guy. I've been a little bit around East Africa, and I have impressions of how South Africa, Cape Town feels kind of like LA to me, but it's a very it's much more dangerous to me and violent than Tanzania. We've been this peaceful oasis, so to speak. Not that there are any rights granted to Tanzanian citizens. They have no right to speak, and there's tons of like a nightmare infrastructure to comply with. But it's been relatively peaceful compared to Burundi and Congo and places nearby. And we have a new president, Magufuli, our previous leader, passed on this year. And so it's sort of a sense of renewal in Tanzania and new opportunities. So it's a safer place to invest in than it was a year ago, and it's fast growing for sure. We've got cheaper data packages than most of the continent, but every time I look at like a new VC fund in Africa, they're always looking at Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria. Those are seen as the safer bets, but I'm kind of a like bet on the altcoin type guy. Like I want to buy that rural piece of land and like build it up. And I mean, this place is huge. It's the size of California, 60 million people, changing so rapidly.
Wow. And why is Tanzania not stacked up against those other countries as viewed by like traditional VCs?
That's a good question. I think some of that has to do with the previous leadership was really hard on outside investment. We were, they could kind of make up a new tax revenue rate. That kind of risk is real, right? You're putting your millions of dollars of investment into a country, and like if you make the leader upset or his party upset, it can have a negative effect. Thank goodness we have a new leader and everything is fine now. But at the time, I think that really made people nervous to invest in Tanzania. That being said, Kenya and Nigeria are really corrupt, and South Africa is as well. I don't live there. But,
yeah.
So I don't know. Some of it just might be it being an undiscovered diamond, something like that.
Yeah, totally. And it's
Zanzibar. It's so beautiful here. There's so many hardworking people, so many young entrepreneurs. I can't tell you how many people come to me like every week or so doing some version of a NINAYO or doing some new idea. And it's like, you want to take on as much as you can to like, let's build this, because it's all right there. It's not a poor country. It's not barren land. It's wealthy. Just poorly arranged so far.
And coming in there from the outside, you come in, you have this idea with NINAYO to help people organize the sale and distribution of maize more efficiently through communication, presumably on a mobile app. Have you learned anything from a cultural standpoint? Are there like categorical things that you come away with the NINAYO experience that you didn't have going into it?
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know who your audience is entirely. Just before I answer that question, because it is very pertinent to an audience that's building for developing markets. And I think during COVID times, especially, like, why would you stay in New York, SF, LA? You should come to where we're free and we run around without masks and lockdowns and stuff. Go to emerging markets with high-speed internet and build to solve those problems. But if you're going to do that, like I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years, a local partner is so essential. Like there's things that I get to see that they don't see, like having fresh eyes, for example, is hugely valuable to be able to like bridge gaps in the market. But when it comes to building product for a Swahili marketplace, there could be a thing like a home button. Like that's very obvious to me when it comes to product development. I've been using it for 20 years, but that's not clear that that's like a return to the first page you landed on type thing. And you really need to build like a user flow that's tested with this market and their preferences. And frankly, there's huge opportunities within USSD systems, which is like a text tree. There's like WhatsApp applications that I think have tremendous potential here as well, as opposed to the internet and the apps that are kind of, I don't think they're going to take off in East Africa, at least like they were expected to do 5 years ago, and as they have in the West.
And that's because people aren't familiar with the UI, and is that kind of the...
Yeah, that's a large part of it. I used this WhatsApp. It's called like Bongo Trivia. It means like Tanzania Trivia app on WhatsApp yesterday. We're just answering questions, and everybody loves to do it. But it was able to dock my mobile money balance each time I played a question for like 40 cents. And the payment function was so smooth. And I didn't even realize I was paying them. And the login and all this stuff was really easy. Now, I want I want you to know when you're paying a company, but we've always struggled with NINAYO and with every website to like register a user, get them to make a payment when you have to work with mobile money as opposed to people on Stripe and the credit card companies. That's this huge other layer. And frankly, there's just chat functions that serve on WhatsApp really well right now. So I could see house hunting, even NINAYO, ordering seedlings and products where you can just do it on WhatsApp or Telegram. I know you're a Telegram guy, and I love you for that.
It's not owned by the big brother Facebook,
I know.
Which I love. Yeah, we use it pretty heavily at Outer Labs too. Do you think that the concept of, I mean, certainly the concept of paying digitally is foreign for people who use, fiat in person, physical money for a majority of the time? Does blockchain and cryptocurrency have an ability to sort of surpass the middle stage of digital? Because the problem with digital is that you're still trusting somebody, some bank, somebody somewhere is managing that flow and can take your money away and just say, hey, you don't have access to it for 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks. I've interacted with folks in Nigeria more so, and Africa seems to have a reputation for having adopted crypto faster than other places because of the need to have that decentralized currency that you can trust, that's going to arrive and send when you get there. Have you seen it in Tanzania as well? People are more excited about crypto, or they get it conceptually, or is it mostly foreign to the average person?
It's mostly foreign to the average person, but that's not to say, there's 60 million people here, so it's a decent sized market. We've been doing blockchain events since like 2017 or 18 on Clubhouse. You have all these blockchain enthusiasts. I always get people on Instagram being like, teach me about crypto. And I'm just like, not fucking touching that. I don't want to like give anybody financial advice other than stop owning fiat. But so I'd almost ask that question back to you. I think the goal of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and blockchain finance, I don't want the average person to have to think about how their money works. I don't think that is a feature of finance that I want to exist, but there is more need for it. We border Zimbabwe. I have the multi-billion-dollar notes downstairs. Like I like to see that every dollar is a Zimbabwean dollar, just slowed down a bit. And when it comes to mobile money adoption, this thing M-Pesa, Tigo Pesa, is used. We're one of the leaders in the world with paying digitally. And yes, it can be stopped by banks and things like that. There is that third party there. But the adoption came out of a need that only 15% of this population is banked to begin with. So you could send money to your brother around the country very easily. And they sort of built a software that people are used to, this USSD text tree. Now, I see the big innovation with crypto being, instead of me sending you 1,000 shillings of mobile money backed up by the Tanzanian bank, which can print more money anytime it wants, let's back it by whatever currency you have in your wallet. So obviously, to me, East Africa will lead this, but there's a heck of a lot of bureaucracy that just needs to be circumvented. You need somebody to be kind of like an Uber type who would just launch it, pay the fees, deal with all the like lawyers and stuff who are going to say, oh no, I don't care if people are voluntarily using your service, it's not fair, and here's a big fine. But they just rush through that bureaucracy and build something that changes lives.
Interesting. I agree with that. I agree with your perspective on that. Do you catch me up on you? Are you now with NINAYO? You have a new project as well.
Yeah.
How did
So okay, yeah. Let me just update on NINAYO. We have moved away from being something like a Craigslist where it's just price discovery and here's a maize farmer and here's a somebody connecting to them. Lots of other players stepped into that market, and it was never profitable from like a venture point of view. You could never sort of scale trading on it as much as I'd hoped to. And where we found an immense problem to solve was that most people farm maize here. I kind of just need to back up and set the stage. Maize is consumed as breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the average Tanzanian as maize and ugali, this gelatinous blob. But the demand is all the year through, right? And there are a couple of harvests throughout the year, and so you see these price changes.
What do you think
Farmers,
of it? Like it, by the way?
Ugali, I love ugali. Yeah, I like the donut variety. That doesn't mean much to you, but it's actually, I think this is funny. Ugali, you pulverize the maize into maize flour, and if you're a wealthy enough Tanzanian, you get it so pulverized that it removes the nutrients. It's like all white, and then the poor people eat it still with like the nutrients in it, and it's kind of beige. And I find that such a funny development in like prosperity that it's like, oh no, I want mine like extra purified. I want it's like white bread in the 50s where it's like clearly less healthy than the oat bread that the poor people were eating. And, it kind of just what is in popular taste changes, not necessarily due to health. But so, sorry, we've got maize. Most farmers are very bad at getting their maize to market. They know the price changes throughout the year. They hold a lot of that maize back themselves with poor storage equipment. Maize gets wet, it gets aflatoxins, bugs get in there, and you lose like 40% of the food supply with people trying, like these small actors trying to play the market. What NINAYO does is says, give me your maize. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to seal it in a hermetically sealed bag. I'm going to store it at the biggest maize trading facility in East Africa, but you still own it. It's still yours. We're partners on this now, and you own it as like you own your mobile money. You can check your wallet, and it's like, all right, Mike has 1 ton of maize. How we price that is based on it's a little complicated, but it's the daily trading average from the day before. So you can go in, like say your dear Leo gets a cold and you need to get some medicine for Leo and you don't have extra cash. You can just pull out a small sale of your maize, instantly cashed out to your wallet for mobile money, and then pay for that medicine and then wait for the price to rise. You can play the market just like a middleman or a trader would. So we've partnered with the farmer there. And from our point of view, most farmers just need cash up front. So we're buying their maize at a lower price than the market will eventually be. But we're partnering with them along the way. And that's what makes it sort of sustainable. It's a huge innovation. It's so good, Mike. It's such a good idea. It's hard to scale up because I have to buy all the farmers' maize. And so what I'm looking to do, I'm in conversations with some great cryptocurrencies right now. Cello.org has been a fan of what we're doing for a long time, and me of what they're doing. We're also starting talks with Cardano to find a way to sort of stake financing for the operational costs of this kind of thing, where you would sort of digitally own that maize with the farmer. It gets a little complicated, especially when you start looking at the regulations of a guy in LA purchasing a ton of maize in Tanzania and then capital gains and all this stuff. But forget about that. Like, I just want to I'm doing a very small case study, which I'm going to make you pitch in on, by the way, where you could lose it. Like we could easily, you give me $100, I'm going to buy that maize with it. We're going to do the proof of concept, and maybe your $100 goes away, but maybe you help get more food to the African market, and we can finally nail down the scalability of how that would work.
So primarily now it's access to capital.
Yeah, that is a big thing we're solving. Like the logistics is a big problem in itself. It's getting it there. But yes, it's the access to like operational costs or capital. Yeah, capital. And banks are a little wary to invest in this sort of thing. It becomes what's known as a digital warehouse receipt system. Mm-hmm. Warehouse receipt systems are very popular across East Africa with, TechnoServe, USAID. They build these things, and the digital component just makes sense, but we can scale it on a massive level.
What's the market size, roughly?
Well, it depends how you want to cut it, but say it's a $12 billion industry in Tanzania alone. It's approaching $1 trillion as you sort of move into Africa. 80% of the workforce survives on what they can grow, right? Agriculture is huge in Africa, and most of them are smallholder farmers.
So practically it would work where NINAYO would sort of become the broker, where you'd effectively be the reputational partner that verifies the weight, the quality, maybe the storage and the integrity of the commodity of maize in this case. And then you would be issuing, effectively you're putting your stamp on it and saying there's 2 tons of maize that's produced here. Now you're allowing other people to purchase that maize. So you're effectively the middle broker where you're verifying the physical quantity, and then allowing people to purchase it. Because it would be digital with blockchain, there can be secondary transactions. People could once it's been established that there is 2 tons of maize, then people can trade it all day, and that's fantastic for the blockchain. So how does it? What are the other implications of this? So people can trade it. The price of maize presumably fluctuates, and so there's intelligent trading, and people can impact the liquidity of the market. They can interject more money. The actual farmers themselves have access to capital. There's higher liquidity on their products, their maize, there wouldn't otherwise be, right? Because there's now more buyers in the market.
Yes. I love hearing other people talk about this. The way you've framed it is accurate. I'm less focused on sort of the, futures market, Chicago commodities exchange aspect and how that can develop, which is totally legit. But my focus has always been on getting more food to the market, more money in the farmers' pockets. I'm sort of so driven on products that make the hardworking, impoverished people make more money. So the implications of this for them is that they get more of their food reaching the market, which means more money in their pocket at a better price. But then we've just laid the groundwork for using their maize as collateral so they can get financing to maybe get irrigation or build their house better. You've sort of started developing all these fintech products around financial services for them. And that's a huge gap in the market in its own. We've also, and this is how I got into Maua Mazuri on a certain level, my other company, is that if a farmer sells me his maize, I know that like, okay, maize is done. Now you're doing tomatoes. Now you're doing some other product. You've got cash in your pocket. I can market you the agro inputs for that. So the agro input industry, the fertilizers and the next round of seedling and stuff is all there as well. So we sort of start with the commodity of maize, which is easily storable. It's pretty basic, not a lot of moving pieces in terms of just bag it, truck it, store it. But then we can start developing more advanced products for them to farm more accurately.
I'm curious on the food itself. Is it completely commoditized where you have just one giant 100-ton bin and you can dump it all in there and it's all the same, or does it need to be individually packaged and like this farmer brought in this bag and it's different from that bag because the quality of the maize is different and so it's worth storing separately? Or is it truly like 100%?
No, there are two grades of maize. There's two grades of maize, and we do have to mark which farmer gave which bag. Eventually, though, we then split the two grades and we can mix them up, and it's in our software who gave which, and it's tracked from there. So I don't need to track it from like, this is Mike's maize all the way through. I don't mind if it gets put into a silo or something, but just off the bat. However, there is a movement towards like, for some reason, blockchain tracing, all that. I don't see why it has to be the blockchain, but there's such a movement towards being able to like figure out that this coffee bean in my Starbucks cup came from like Tanzanian Michael. And it seems like a total racket of nonsense to me. But
the blockchain part of it?
Yeah, a little bit. And it's just a heap of paperwork along the way where it's kind of like, maybe I'm missing the point, but it just seems like a lot of meddling that doesn't need to occur when there's real problems to solve, like much bigger problems to be solving in these value chains.
Yeah. Well, there's people like knowing where the original plant came out of the earth. I mean, that's
cool. No, I get that. I love plants. I'm a farmer now, Mike. But I do see it as a bit of like, I don't really think you can get down to the bean from the tree along the way. You do want to aggregate. It's a natural part of any commodities production. But anyways, that's just me trying to be provocative against something perfectly reasonable, like tracing your food.
Well, the blockchain part of it certainly seems to open up the floodgates for money for people investing, where it'd be practically really difficult, right? To say there was tell me if I'm sure you've thought about this much more than I have, but say there's a NINAYO maize, there's like a maize coin, right? I'm purchasing the maize coin and maybe there's multiple variations of it, but it's effectively minted by, how would it work? It'd be like created, the coin would be created by an organization centralized that determines how much physical product is in, how much physical product is in the market. So you're pegging, one coin, say, to 1 pound of maize. So there would need to be someone to say that this, just as in NFTs, somebody has to say that there is this unique piece of art, it exists, and therefore we're stamping it with this unique token. And so you guys would effectively act as that trusted approval minter. I mean, is that the right way to think about it?
So, yeah, and I've had this discussion a couple of times with some people trying to push us down this direction. And to me, it's never entirely added up to solving the problem that is in front of me. It doesn't mean that it's not the solution, but for us to like burn and mint tokens for the maize price, I'm not that good at what I do to where I know the supply of maize. To me, I'm still one small actor, right? And I like the idea of, that much power entrusted to NINAYO, but I couldn't wield it effectively. So I don't know if a commodities trader anywhere in the world would be able to effectively tell you, I mean, maybe with some satellite data imagery to be able to tell you, okay, this is what it looks like, ballpark. And I've been working with the commodities exchange here in Tanzania on this topic. And every time I think like, this is a bit of hocus pocus. I don't really think we have a grasp on 60 million, well, probably 5 million smallholder farmers. It's still the Wild West out here. It's a patchwork of tribes and villages. So, I mean, that's the difference, where I think American farming is so much more on the grid, and like, these are your major farmers and you can add it up in an Excel spreadsheet somehow. We're still a big mystery out here.
Yeah, I mean, that seems certainly true. I do think that you can draw a line between what is currently tracked on the market and then what's currently, who knows, it's like, it's not on the market. So, first the farmer owns it when it comes out of the ground, they process it, package it, they ship it. Once it enters the circle of NINAYO in the storage container, you're registering it as being received. So you can now quantitatively, reliably track that and presumably sell that in the secondary market. I think that seems pretty straightforward. And you don't need to know how much maize is out there in the world. You just need to know how much you have within your walls, because you can sell in the secondary market. Like, you can have transactions of that maize, 20 times a day from people across the world. And the farmers could be getting, they could effectively sell ownership, fractional ownership of that maize. Like, I'll sell 20% of my maize today. And that, like you said earlier, they can use that. It's not really collateral. It's more selling liquidity of their asset. So selling a portion of the maize in exchange for money. That seems like a good use case for blockchain, because it allows you're effectively taking the concept of a stock market, which is that NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. Somebody has to verify that there's a transaction happening, and that somebody is so much nicer if it's decentralized, and that seems to be the appeal, which I assume is kind of the general trajectory of where you're going with it. Is the blockchain piece of it what Maua Mazuri is uniquely doing, or how do you separate the two projects?
Let me come to Maua Mazuri in a second, because no, there's not that association with the blockchain yet. But this is why I want you advising me more. It's still at this nascent stage about how we bring in the crypto here. And this was, I feel like a jerk, but what is his name? Andre from Cello.org. I think his name, no, Renee or something. I don't know. Really nice guy, was pushing the same route with me of exactly what you're describing. And I don't know that we're at the scale for that to be that practical. And then I really want value in everything I'm doing. I don't want to make the price of maize 500x or something and be holding a token, and then that impacts food supplies in a negative way. I mean, I'd love to then sling that token on for big money. And maybe I'm creating a false problem here and misunderstanding it. But there's obviously opportunities for market makers, and you're saying NINAYO would be that market maker here, something like a liquidity pool type situation.
Yeah, let me kind of give you my thoughts on it from somebody who has thought about it a lot less than you have. So I think of there's a price of maize that exists. Somebody maybe doesn't write it down, but it exists because there has to be transactions based on some valuation of the maize. So I'm sure you could probably tell me what a pound of maize costs in the market.
I'll just tell you now, the price of maize obviously changes all the time. How we just simplify it is there's a chalkboard where they write the average price from the day before, and that's what we'll give you. There's a chalkboard. I pump that into a USSD system every day. It's very basic, but it's actually kind of great. It is the average of lots of transactions yesterday, and you can now have that digitally.
Yeah.
So they're doing that, but if the price goes crazy, I'm still a bit of an intermediary there, and I could still accidentally add a zero or fail to add a zero. There's some realm for mistakes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, is that an external marketplace would help to do a few things. It would help add value to the farmer's life in a few very tangible ways. So one of the ways is that the price fluctuations are detrimental. They're harmful to farmers on a certain level, because if you produce maize and there's a cost associated with that, and then the price drops, obviously you're making less money for that maize, especially if you're pressured to sell it for some reason. Having a marketplace for the maize helps to stabilize the price of the maize, because investors will say, we know roughly what maize is worth. And so any fluctuations in that price, if the price dips a lot, investors are going to buy that. And when they buy it, they're going to bump back up the price of the maize. And so they want to take advantage of the discrepancies between highs and lows. That's what investors do. And that's how they add value to the marketplace. They help stabilize the price. And that's what happens in the US in the commodities industry. You know, when you're trading oil or corn or something like that, you're effectively buying the price discrepancies from when it's underpriced or when it's overpriced. And people, you know, there's a whole career that people do there. But I would argue that because investors don't have access to this commodity pool in maize and in other crops that are produced in Africa, they don't have the ability to add value to those farmers' lives. They can't help stabilize the price because it's written on a chalkboard. They can't put their money into it. And so you're doing the same thing fundamentally when you write down the price on a chalkboard, which is you're saying this is what the price is. But when you were to open up the market and allow other people to buy into it, it would help to stabilize it, not only across day to day, but week to week and year to year, even seasonal. I'm sure there's a fluctuation there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it would add sort of an insurance policy. So I would say to farmers, hey, we're going to guarantee that the price is stabilized. So now you can pull out money from your commodity, your pool of produced goods. You can invest in that tractor or that equipment, whatever you need to farm. And you can be relatively sure that the price is going to be stable for, you know, a period of time for you to rely on it. And that's a big part of the underlying commodity industry today is you can take loans out. You can have financial instruments that allow you to grow because you have that stabilization in the price. The price indicates so much. So stabilization in the price matters a lot. So those are the two things. I think when you write it down on the chalkboard or you put it in an Excel sheet, now the question is, how do you liquefy that asset? In other words, how do you pay the farmer? Where does the money come from that goes to the farmer? It has to come from somewhere, right? So first off, in the simplest way, it would be a purchaser directly buying it from the farmer. In the case of broker, like you guys, you're connecting the buyers and the sellers. So somebody presumably walks in the door or pays you for the maize, right? How does that?
Well, let me interject because that could work that way, but it's too complicated. Why this requires a lot of financing is that I want that farmer to be able to get paid instantly at that price of yesterday. So NINAYO pays them instantly. We just move their maize from being owned by them to being owned by us. So you say sell, fine, I'll purchase at that price I gave you yesterday, and I'm playing the slope in the market. And that's the setup.
And so you guys have NINAYO has cash that it uses to pay the farmers. It has a reserve capital.
Yeah, correct. But it's not that big a reserve. And that's part of the reason we're bringing in other financing mechanisms here, where if you were to, I think it's live on our site now, where you could put some Bitcoin you can stake Bitcoin or Ethereum. I just need the money from it to go pay for this cost here. Due to the changes in the prices of those assets, though, it would just be returning the dollar value, not the exact amount of Bitcoin.
And then how do you go and sell that? Like, where do you just go in the market and then individual?
So if you think about it, the average farmer does like a ton or two of maize, and we're doing like freights of maize. So we buy 30, 40 tons of maize, and then that's 30 or 40 customers from us, and then we're selling it to one guy when prices are higher, right?
Really?
We're just selling one truckload. Yeah. And we're about to sell our about 78 tons from last harvest right now to one person, right? We just, boom, okay, price agreed in. Some farmers sold it a little higher, most sold it much lower. So it'll work out.
What is that? Who's that guy? Who buys 80 tons of maize?
So that's a good question. I should know who this guy is. I haven't shaken his hand or anything like that. I have a guy in Dodoma who's telling me this is what the price is. I say, okay, but it's most likely a miller. it'll probably go to the major manufacturers here in Tanzania. We have a few main companies that buy in that quantity.
I
You wouldn't know their names, but
see.
Bakresa,
Yeah. And so they presumably they have a price, they have access to the market via a couple providers or just I guess you call them, what's
they're
that?
very rich companies, and they didn't get rich by buying from one person. They are hustlers. They have buyers all around the place. That's traders in East Africa are not screwing around. If
Mm.
you go in there with good intentions, you're going to get your lunch eaten. You
Mm.
really, I mean, I respect that. I have no objection to it. But yeah, these companies, they'll buy 30, 40 tons or whatever, but they try not to buy from you when prices are high, right? If prices are high, they're kind of they pull back as best they can, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So then, so they see what the price is because they have access to multiple suppliers. And so they can say, I'm going to take it from this guy. He's cheaper. This guy, he's a better quality, but effectively they have some internal price. They're writing on the chalkboard on their side, this is what we're willing to pay. And so there is a price differential there between what the farmers sell to you and then what the big guys buy from the buyers. And it seems to me like that the price is probably pretty big because it has to support, trading. It has to support, probably multiple levels of transactions across there. The nice thing I could see that a currency that's pegged to maize would do, if it's verified under a trusted like stamp of approval, say NINAYO, is that you could effectively become the market maker for the maize price. So you could say you could effectively act as the buyers and suppliers between the big guys who are purchasing 100 plus tons and the individual farmers. So you can say, well, this is what the price is, and you could say this is, the farmers could sell into you guys, and then you sell up to the bigger providers. It seems to me like the fluctuations in price are the key. It's the difference between the price is $100 per ton or however it's structured today, and then it's significantly different in a month. So is that kind of how you're thinking of it? Is that the price fluctuation is where the access to outside?
I've got 12 years worth of data from a lot of institutions on this, a lot of my own research as well, showing that price. It's not necessarily 1 month to the next, but you'll see over a 100% delta annually. It can be a 300% delta occasionally, where like a farmer's getting 100 shillings in January, but then the price is 300 shillings of 6 months later. There's so many factors that go into that price. It's production, it's free trade, all these things that are not necessarily terribly predictable, as much as that the supply will be bigger at harvest times, right? So there is that predictable trend. Now, what you mentioned about being able to set the price to say, like, farmer, this is it. It's 80 now. Buyer, it's 120. I cannot tell you how much good that would do to this economy, right? It's all so haggled over, and that's why all this maize is going to waste. It's easier said than done. I've watched a lot of organizations push for it before, and been in seminars about the need for price setting, but yes, investment via blockchain might be the way into that. That could be the mechanism to say, okay, wait, it's undervalued now, buy. It's starting to go up, sell. And that would have a huge net benefit on food supply reaching demand in Africa.
Yeah. God, it's such an interesting problem. It feels like if there, to me, it smells like there's a solution here and you were getting close to it, or you're getting very close to it. So let's take a simplest example. Say one person came to you with 100 grand and they said, Jack, I want to give you this 100 grand and I want you to give it back to me in a year for 110,000. give me 10% return on this investment in 1 year. And you said, okay, great. The way you're going to do that is you're going to take that 100K and you're going to buy maize, and then you're going to sell the maize for more. And presumably you'll make, 15% return and give him 10% back. So that return, I think, is what, in a simple, like throwing out the word blockchain or crypto or token or anything like that, that's effectively the deal that you're making with everyone who's giving you money. Now, I think the way that people send you money is instead of wire transferring money to your bank account, they're giving you that value in the form of a token. So they're saying, hey, they're effectively buying tokens from you. So they're sending you money in the bank, but they're getting a token in return. And the token represents the price of maize, so that when they're buying maize, they're effectively your partner. They're buying it next to you. So saying, I'm going to go in with you on this deal, Jack. You put in 20K, we're going to put in 10K, and collectively we're going to make this 30K transaction. The value of the token should go up when you sell it because it's pegged to the maize, and then they can get their return. They could sell it at any point. The tricky part is like, how do you know? The tricky part is that the value of a token is, there's two things that influence the value of a stock price and a token. One is what the actual product is itself. If you're selling, say like Tesla has a certain valuation of the stock price, like $600 per share. That's based on a market cap, is based on a real valuation. How many cars are they shipping? How much revenue are they doing? Details of the business. The second thing is it's based on what people think it's going to be worth in the future. So it's like a human, price triples tomorrow for Tesla. It's not because they're making more cars or did anything. It might just be that people are really excited about Tesla. So there's two dynamics in play here. One is the actual value of maize by what people are willing to pay for it. And then there is the perceived value in the marketplace. Like, why would the price of oil spike? The price of oil could double tomorrow. It doesn't mean that there's, any change in oil, but there's external factors that humans value.
Yeah, and so this is where I struggle with the tokenomics side of it, and I think Tesla is a great example of a company that's stock is not determined by the same metric as, I don't know, what are other companies do? Boeing, somebody who has like all these, there's a P&L and like a pretty standard practice for how to value that stock, but Tesla's hot because of tweets, that perception of what it could be is a big deal.
Yeah.
So that, to me, all that noise and excitement is cool. I'm excited by that, and I think it could have a big impact in Africa to get people excited about, if I could get Nicki Minaj to buy a coin that helps more food get to Africa, I'm all thrilled for the hype and that sort of thing. And that's definitely a potential. Like, this could get people hyped and get people involved who want to help here through decentralization. But the specific problem you asked about, like, how do I pay people back with a token? I don't quite have the answer to that. I do know that, like, okay, if with $100,000 budget, I can put together a pretty reliable model to give you 110 a year from now. I'm not sure how to do that via token.
Yeah. I just have to give you my first reaction. I think that the former scenario you painted with Nicki Minaj and the hype, I wouldn't invite that, because I think that actually hurts the second scenario, because it's effectively, what you're effectively doing is saying, hey, we're playing games over here. Come and invest in this fun game that's not serious and, is not trustworthy. It might go up tomorrow, it might go tomorrow. Who knows? Fugazi. But if you say, hey, this is like, take, for example, the NFTs that are pegged to digital or physical products. Like, if you take these headphones could have an NFT associated with them, and that can be a perfectly rational thing to do. as long as this object, whether it's a digital good or a physical good, as long as that object is controlled by some trusted third party. So in the case of like art, say for instance, a museum is going to be a trustworthy place to store art. So if a museum stores 1,000 pieces of unique art, those pieces of art can be bought and trade on the NFT marketplace reliably, because I know at any given point, if I own the token, I can walk in that door and get that piece of art. If you don't have the museum and the art is not connected to the token, then the whole thing dissolves. And I think this is where you're feeling the like, good, any sense? Because what if you go and sell the maze? Like, how is it connected to the token? So the key part of this is there has to be the bridge between the digital representation of the good, the token, and the physical good itself. And that is what I view as NINAYO could become that trusted third party, where it says, hey, we put our stamp on the fact that there's 110 tons of maize in our warehouse. And when you are buying this token, you're buying, 0.25 tons of maize, and we're going to sell you this token in exchange. So you're controlling the marketplace. There has to be a control, especially in commodities, of the number of finite goods that are in circulation. Anything that's happening outside the NINAYO ecosystem, who cares? It's irrelevant. It's a different thing. But you're creating your own marketplace. And the thing is, the more you have control and develop trust, the more the marketplace is incentivized to grow. Because farmers want to say like, hey, I would love to have my maize inside in NINAYO's warehouse, because then it could be traded on the marketplace. And so more and more people are going to want to put their maize in that trusted marketplace. It's like the same reason that Tesla's traded on the NASDAQ, is because that's a trusted marketplace. NASDAQ stakes your reputation in saying these are the number of shares in the business. They're managing the transactions from the buyers and sellers. So I view the very same way that there's this walled garden is what NINAYO is bringing to the market, where the way that you sell ownership in the maize is through a token. How would you say to somebody, hey, Mike, you can go and purchase, a quarter ton of maize? How would that practically work? How can I actually pay you for that maize? Well, one easy way would I sign up for my Coinbase account, or I sign up for, whatever, a sushi swap, and I buy, 0.25, say it's 1-to-1, 1 ton of maize is tied to 1 token, for instance. Then you could say it's pegged to the commodity. Then I can go and buy it. And there's a price that fluctuates, but effectively I'm buying it and selling it. And you, as the walled garden, you as the provider of that, you're in charge of issuing new tokens. So you can say, well, we just received another ton of maize, therefore we're going to put it on the market at this set price. When someone pays when they buy the token, they're paying you. The money goes to you because you issued the token. You're trading the token that you just created for the money that someone's buying it. So the couple of key things, I think. One is NINAYO has to maintain, ultimately, you have to maintain and you have to put your stamp on the amount of maize that's in the warehouse. You have to say exactly how much maize is on the market. Two, you have to be in control of printing new tokens. We received 1 ton of maize, therefore we're printing 1,000 new tokens. That there has to be a 1-to-1 peg. Like Tether, for example, Tether has a bank account with $1 trillion in it, literally, and they will always have the exact amount of dollars in their bank account to Tethers in circulation. So I think it's think of it like a stable coin, where the maize is like 1/10 of maize to 1,000 tokens. It's always the same. And the reason why I buy NINAYO coin or I buy Tether is I trust Tether. I have Tether, and I trust that the Tether organization is honest when they say that they have $1 in the bank account. Because if they lie, then the whole project dissolves. But they get audited, and they're audited. I interviewed the founder of Tether on my podcast, and he was telling me about the whole process. So that to me seems the way to approach it. I'd love to hear your reaction if any of that makes any sense.
No, it very much does, and I can't wait to play this for Joe Slack, our developer, because I'm with you on this. That is a huge, like the gate. Being a gatekeeper is valuable, right? I see what you're saying there. And I'm going to trade my USD coin for Tether, if you say that's more okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, it's so fun, man, how early days, I mean, it feels like we're all 10 years into the crypto world now. And like, everybody's always like, am I late? No, you're not late. Like, there's so much development underway in this sector. And tying it to a commodity, you might want to trade into owning maize in this particular warehouse or growing network of warehouses. And in part, to me, I always think there will be a bit of a social impact element to it. And what I mean by that is you'll get better returns by playing the market, right? Like I like to keep my Bitcoin in Bitcoin and, you know, a few other assets, but I might stake it into something like a Maize coin or a NINAYO coin, um, for a bit of the human impact and element of it. And we have to do a really good job of sort of storytelling that. I was making fun of like knowing who your coffee farmer is, but in this instance, it might be nice to know this is like Mama Joe's farm, right? Like you're helping this woman's maize hit the market at a better price. You're buying it from this lady with 3 kids, and
yeah,
like heck yeah, I'm on board with that. Let that matter to you. I like to bring in the emotional, the human element to finance, because
yeah,
finance really impacts people.
yeah, 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 totally. So I could almost see like Ninayo, kind of what you're doing now is you're also acting as a buyer in the market when Ninayo goes and buys maize from a farmer. You're kind of, think of it like this: what if in the future 100% of the transactions in and out of the warehouse for maize is conducted? It has to be a token. So let's just take the 1 to 1, 1 ton of maize equals 1 token. That's the peg.
Yeah, I
And
love it.
NINAYO as an organization is just, all you're responsible for is controlling how much maize is in the warehouse and then issuing new tokens. So your job of NINAYO, make sure that 1 ton of maize in the warehouse is equal to 1 ton. 1 token. If you can
Okay.
just do that, then you don't need. I mean, if someone comes in and they say, "Hey, we want to buy maize," what you say is, "Hey, give us, 1 token." You have to go and you have to buy a token and send us a token if you want 1 ton of maize. The farmer, the way that the farmer gets paid is they get paid 1 token if they ship 1 ton of maize into NINAYO. Now, the thing you have to solve is, how do they go from, okay, this is great, this token that I have, how do I convert it to like money to buy stuff that I want? That's where I think the emergence of exchanges are critical to this. Like, you have to have a way to go from the NINAYO token to, my shekel or my
Yeah, shilling close. Yeah. But and also this is why I'm so well seated. I don't think most Westerners understand how big mobile money is,
yeah,
but these folks have been using fake phone digital currencies forever. It's
yeah,
not a big deal to be like, here's 1 token. You go to that guy and you cash it out, and that guy would be sitting at the warehouse, right? There would be a guy at the warehouse who says, yes, give me your token, verify. They'd go, oh, internet niambaya, oh, problem network, and then eventually it goes through. That's how these things work.
mm-hmm.
And then here's your cash, right? We do need to let you cash out into the Tanzanian shilling.
But yeah, that should be a very solvable thing, because as long
it,
as you have NINAYO on blockchain, on chain, you can trade it with any other on chain, and then you can trade it into fiat.
yeah, and what it's not a big learning curve for that within this population.
Mm.
It's just regulation would be insane, but I think you could kind of Uber your way through it.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and
All the momentum in the world, for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's exciting times. I didn't even get to Maua Mazuri, which is another, I mean, it's a tissue culture seedling company, but we'll have to delve into that more next time. But
Yeah,
like, we're trying to make Like one of the things I love about Africa is that everybody is a farmer. It's so weird that where we grow up, we have like lawns in the front yard that people work all hard on that give you no money or food. I mean,
Mm,
they look nice, but like everybody here is planting orchards, they're growing maize, they're growing bananas, and I'm I'm really loving being so involved in the seedling production and bringing like healthier genetics to the market. So there's
mm,
just so many gaps in this market that if you want to focus on them, you can have a big impact.
mm. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Um, so, Mike, it's great to see you again.
Yeah. I hope this was somewhat useful, or at
Uh,
least pushing. I mean, you've thought about this a lot more than I have, but I do feel like as long as you can control the amount of maize in the warehouse, issue new tokens, and have a suggested way that people can go from tokens to fiat, like that's kind of in order to get fire, you need fuel, you need heat, and you need oxygen. And I think that's kind of your scenario. As long as you can control the warehouse, print new tokens, and have a way people can exchange them on the marketplace for fiat, like you have the ability to make some, serious fire. So yeah, man.
will
Jack,
you design the PowerPoint for me? Can you
yeah.
send me?
Well, if anyone's listening, and they want to contribute to the project, where are you most active? Are you on Twitter?
LinkedIn is frankly the way to get a hold of me. I've deleted Instagram from my phone, which is like the last remnant of that little empire. I also have WhatsApp. I was booted off of Twitter. I hardly use Facebook anymore. I'm trying to get into emailing a little more. I think social media is so important. We do want to talk to everybody, but I creatively suffer if I don't let boredom kick in. I need to be able to not scroll. And so that's mostly my objection, is that I just don't want to look at screens all day.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, cool, man. It was great to see you and great to catch up.
Well. All right. Cheers, brother.
All
Take
right,
it
bye.
easy.